Chapter 5. Grayson sat in his study with the door firmly closed, preparing to answer Jenna's email. The last thing he needed was for her to walk in while he was writing an email on company time and end up getting scolded again. If he was reasonable and clear-headed, he would have set the record straight. But reasonable and clear-headed weren't options when dealing with Ms. Newman. So, he did what he did best. If she wanted to hear from businessman Mr. Miller, then she would. Ms. Newman, I have read your concerns regarding the gardener. I suggest, as the manager, you take up your complaints directly with him and deal with the matter how you see fit. Finding out his name would be a good start. I'm still waiting for a list of possible business names. Please forward as soon as possible. Grayson Miller. Grayson sat back and read the email before sending it. It said what it needed to. If she was going to complain about the gardener, then she'd have to be the one to come up with a solution. He was interested to see how this was going to play out. The next move was up to her. Until then, he had a maze to plant.
Jenna hadn't been sure where to go after the incident in the kitchen. She wasn't even sure if the couple was still there or if they had moved on. She just knew she had to get some distance from them. A replaying question formed in the back of her mind. Did the baby belong to the husband or to the cranky gardener? She was afraid that the answer was the gardener, and it left a bitter taste in her mouth. On her quest to find a work spot, Jenna had spied a shade tree out in the distance. Since the couple was otherwise occupied, she took advantage of the shady nook and settled down to work. When Jenna read the email, a lump formed in her throat. He had picked up on the fact that she didn't even know the gardener's name. How embarrassing. Of course he would pick up on something so obvious. He also put the responsibility back on her shoulders. She frowned and leaned back against a tree trunk to think. Jenna still had no idea what to name the business. The mansion was so overwhelming that it was hard to think of it in only 1 or 2 words. She loved the mansion. Even though she'd been here for less than 48 hours, she felt as if she was home. If only she didn't have to deal with the gardener or Mr. Miller, then everything would be perfect. Since she wasn't sure about a business name, she decided to move on to creating a form. Unfortunately, a certain employee would have to be given a verbal warning, and a record of that warning was imperative, hence the form. Jenna had so many things she should be doing right now. The verbal warning was necessary, yet a complete waste of her time. He should know better. He was a grown man, possibly with a baby on the way. It had pleased Jenna to no end to fire him, but everyone deserved a warning before being let go. And he was going to have a baby to take care of. Maybe. Most likely. After 10 minutes, the form was complete, and she was in the process of filling it out. Name? Damn. This was becoming embarrassing. How was she going to give the man a warning if she didn't even know his name? Well, this was just for the record. The actual warning was only verbal, and therefore he didn't need a copy of the completed form, unless he requested one. She didn't think he would. Jenna typed in gardener for the name and filled out the rest of the form, attempting to be constructive, not merely complaining. It was proving difficult. She looked up in time to see the man in question heading across the yard to the hedges. If he'd noticed her, he didn't acknowledge it. She didn't think he did. From his expression, he was thinking of something. Most likely his pregnant married girlfriend. He picked up his shovel and stabbed into the earth, digging holes large enough for the potted hedges. She leaned back against the tree and watched. There were 1,000,001 things that she needed to do, but perhaps watching for a few minutes might prove useful. He was a closed man. Well, except when talking to the perky blonde, then he was full of smiles, and she had even heard him laugh. It was a warm, rich laugh that tickled the senses. Not her senses, of course. Jenna sighed. This wasn't helping at all. The only thing that she noticed about him was that he had strong arms and broad shoulders. A full 15 minutes later, she shook herself out of a trance and decided to make an appointment with him to have their talk. She had many calls to make this afternoon, so maybe they could talk over dinner. It might lessen the blow a little if he was eating a delicious meal. Not that she cared if he took offense to the verbal warning. He was obviously one shoe over on the depraved side if he was having an affair. Still, he had nice arms and a nice laugh. And his eyes. And where the hell was Mr. Miller? She knew he was a busy man, but this had gone way beyond rude. Jenna closed the laptop and stood. She stretched and then squared her shoulders, crossing the distance to the hedges. When she was only a few feet away, she cleared her throat. The irritating man didn't acknowledge her until he tossed the last bit of dirt around the hedge roots. He leaned against his shovel.
Can I help you?
I was wondering if we could have a chat over dinner. I'll make something really good, Jenna said with a smile.
What do you want to chat about?
Jenna watched him wipe the sweat off his brow with his forearm, leaving a streak of dirt. He must have realized his mistake since he muttered a curse. He pulled the bottom hem of his shirt to his forehead to wipe it clean, exposing his stomach and giving Jenna a front-row peek at his tight abs. She must be dehydrated, she concluded, wondering why her mouth was instantly parched. She ripped her eyes away from the gardener's abs, only to find him watching her with a laughing gleam in his eye. How was she not supposed to stare when he lifted his shirt with no warning? If she did that, he would stare too. She almost did it just to prove her point, but she realized that it wasn't quite the same when a woman lifted her shirt.
Well?
What? Jenna asked. She couldn't even remember why she was over here. The man was a complete distraction.
What are we going to chat about?
He repeated the question. Oh, Jenna said, squaring her shoulders again. I believe we got off on the wrong foot. I'd like to discuss our working situation and what I expect from staff.
Is this a two-way conversation? Do I get to tell you what I expect?
He asked, leaning against his shovel again. Jenna gave a nod. This would be the perfect opportunity.
I have a feeling you won't like what I have to say,
he said with a secret smirk. I have a feeling the case is mutual. Dinner will be ready at 6. Please don't be late, and don't take a shower in Mr. Miller's room, she warned, heading to the house.
Grayson watched Jenna's marching form disappear into the house. He didn't know whether to laugh or throw his shovel. One thing he did know, he was going to set the record straight tonight. Jenna was putting the finishing touches on dinner when Grayson walked into the kitchen, covered head to toe in dirt.
You're filthy!
Jenna scolded, shooing Grayson out of the kitchen.
Go take a shower. You only have 5 minutes before dinner is ready.
You said I couldn't take a shower, Grayson said.
I said you couldn't take a shower in Mr. Miller's bathroom. There are a dozen other bathrooms you can use.
But there is only one I want to use, Grayson argued, watching with satisfaction when Jenna's lips thinned. He didn't know why he just didn't tell her he had lost track of time and had wanted to warn her that he'd be a little late for dinner. Maybe he wanted to provoke her just like she provoked him.
That's his bathroom, not yours.
Is it really? Grayson taunted, his head cocked to the side.
Yes, and I'm here to protect his property.
No, you're here to manage it.
Same difference. I'm here to protect and manage, and I'll be damned if I'll let you dirty up his shower,
she stated, waving a wooden spoon back and forth in front of him. Grayson nearly smiled at her as she huffed and blustered. Fine, then I'll use your bathroom, he said. This time he did smile. Her stuttering reaction was exactly what he needed to lift his spirits. He turned on his heel and left her gaping at him. I'll be down in 5 minutes, he called. A single curse was her response. He grinned. Grayson didn't use her shower. He didn't feel like transferring his clothes and necessities up to her room, even though it would have pleased him to know it irked her. Grayson decided to use his shower since, well, it was his. If she wanted to drag him from the bathroom, then he welcomed her to try. The thought popped an unwanted picture into his head of her in the shower. It wasn't a bad picture. In fact, it was. Damn. By the time he was clean and dressed, he found Jenna waiting at the table with crossed arms.
You're late.
Lots of dirt, Grayson replied, and sat down across from her.
If the food is cold, it's your fault.
I'll eat it, Grayson said. I'm so hungry I doubt I'll even taste it. Jenna uncrossed her arms and began dishing out portions of chicken pasta. "You don't have to make my plate," Grayson said, watching her spoon heaps of food onto it.
Tell me something about yourself.
She requested, ignoring his comment. "Like what?" he asked, picking up his fork. She sat down and picked up her own fork.
How long have you been a gardener?
Grayson took a bite of chicken and looked thoughtful for a moment. When he swallowed, he said, "I believe 5 weeks, maybe a week or two more. The first 2 weeks weren't really gardening. It was more like digging." Jenna choked.
5 weeks? Why did Mr. Miller hire you without qualifications?
"Why did he hire you?" Grayson asked. Jenna ignored the question, but the look she shot him was deadly.
How long have you and Maya been together?
"I've known her for 3 years,"
Oh,
she said quickly, taking a big bite of pasta.
do you have any siblings?
She finally asked after a few minutes of silence. Grayson looked up. "I have 2 brothers. You?" Jenna stilled.
None.
Grayson had picked up on a slight flinch, but decided to let it go. He didn't really want to know about her anyway. He was just being polite.
Do you have any hobbies?
Grayson shook his head. No. She tried a few additional questions, each resulting in one-word answers. Jenna looked as if she wanted to reach across the table and strangle him. Jenna took her last bite of pasta, settled back against the chair, and crossed her arms, waiting for him to finish. Grayson shoveled the last of the food into his mouth, hiding his smile. He knew Jenna was fuming on the other side of the table, and he had a wicked sense of satisfaction knowing that he was the one who had made her mad. He also knew that she was getting ready to tear into him at any moment, and he found himself contently waiting for her to begin her assault. "Is there dessert?" Grayson asked innocently. Jenna's brows pinched together.
There's ice cream in the freezer.
Grayson popped out of his seat and crossed over to the freezer, eyeing the selection. It was quite a selection. 7 different brands and flavors were stocked. Did she buy these, or had they been sitting in here for years, never eaten? He wasn't sure if he had ever used this freezer before. He felt Jenna move around him.
Can't find one you like?
She asked, reaching past him to grab a flavor. "Did you buy all of these?" he asked.
I like ice cream.
She stated, taking a bowl from the cupboard. "Apparently." She shot him a withering look. He wasn't one to complain about dessert. He'd eat ice cream or whatever else was put in front of him. But 7 different flavors? It was quirky. Something she was not. Or was she?
Do you want this one?
She asked, passing a bowl over. He took the offered bowl and settled back at the table. When she joined him, he said, "Go ahead."
Go ahead with what?
She asked, taking a bite of ice cream. Did she just sigh? Over ice cream? Grayson had the impression that she had. Perhaps she was a little quirky after all. "With my reprimand," Grayson said, waiting for a reaction. Nothing. She was too happy eating her ice cream.
Later,
She finally said. Grayson gave a shrug and worked on his ice cream. It was butter brickle or something like it. It was creamy and buttery with stuff mixed in. Decent enough. He thought her more of a coffee flavor, strong, bold, and something he wouldn't enjoy. Jenna scraped up the last bite and looked sadly at the empty bowl. "There's more in the freezer," Grayson said.
I'm only allowed 1 bowl a day.
She stated, pushing the dish away and looking up at him. Her lips thinned, and she took on the appearance of the little drill sergeant he had come to know and dread. The change was amazing and unsettling all at the same time.
Let's get on with this, shall we?
Grayson pushed his bowl away as well. "By all means,"
This conversation will act as a verbal warning.
she stated, launching into the constructive criticism that she had spelled out in her original email to Mr. Miller. Grayson stared at her blankly until she neared the end of her talk, which was several agonizing minutes long. What he wanted to do was tell her to pack her bags and get the hell out of his house, but he was curious to see just how far she would push him. So he let her continue.
I'm sure you're a decent person.
she said at the end.
If you take some of my suggestions and follow the new rules that will be established promptly, I foresee you working happily here for a long time. I know with a baby on the way, you'll need a dependable, well-paying job. With the right work attitude, you can go far. Which brings me to the hedges.
Jenna said as Grayson turned thunderous.
I think it'd be better if we put you in a different role, one more suited to your skills. I don't know what those are, but it's obviously not gardening.
Her eyes scanned him.
I am nothing if not reasonable, but perhaps a back-of-the-house position.
Grayson's anger was gone in a flash as he broke into a roaring laugh. Jenna watched him with wide eyes, shock plainly written on her face. Still laughing, Grayson pushed back from the table and left Jenna sitting there, puzzled. She quickly stood and followed in his wake.
We're not done yet.
I think we are. She reached out to stop him.
No, we're not.
He stopped so suddenly that she smacked up against his back. He turned and glared down at her. You assume far too much, he growled. I believe there are some things you should know. Jenna stepped back.
What don't I know?
What is my name? He asked. Jenna flinched. Before she could respond, he said, You don't know because you assumed I was a gardener. Am I too lowly to have a name?
Of course not.
She said immediately.
It was an oversight on my part. I was very nervous when I arrived, and I should have stopped to properly introduce myself and ask your name. I'm sorry,
she said sincerely. She looked up at him with questioning eyes.
What is your name?
At her upturned face, he nearly told her. Let her squirm for a little more, he thought. He turned on his heel and walked out to the patio.
Aren't you going to tell me?
She asked, following closely. Grayson stopped at the patio table and pointed down to a large paper spread flat on it. Another thing you assumed was that I didn't know what I was doing, he said. Jenna leaned over to look at the design for an extensive garden that included a maze. Of course it was made of hedges. She looked up sheepishly, but then took a deep breath and squared her shoulders.
I owe you another apology. Clearly you were following instructions that I was unaware of.
Grayson gave a slight nod of acknowledgement.
I'd like to start over,
Jenna said, holding out her hand.
My name is Jenna Newman. I'm the new manager. I'm very pleased to make your acquaintance.
Grayson looked down at her outstretched hand, waiting patiently for him to shake it. He took it firmly and pulled her up against him. She gave a startled squeak, gazing up at him as if not knowing what to expect. Nice to meet you, Jenna Newman, he fairly snarled. I'm Grayson Miller.